Yeah, welcome in, welcome in. All right, guys. I want to be mindful of Suzanne's time. So let's, without any further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce her, and then I'll put her on the big screen. So, um, guys, welcome to the live. As you guys know, I like to share information. So I reached out to Suzanne. She's from Hatch, and I was like, "Hey, I would love to have you on my platform so we could talk about some of the features and benefits that Hatch has that could help business to grow." And she was like, "Sure." She did not hesitate. We were talking back and forth, and it was just the only thing she wanted to know was when. What's the time, when, and we'll make it happen. So I really want to thank her for coming on tonight and to talk to us. Now, I hope some of you guys were able to get the discount deal for Ash Digitizing 3 for $7.99 because I'm jealous because I didn't get it for that. But I hope some of you guys did get a chance to get that deal, and I'm sure it will come back around sometime soon. Um, but if you don't have Hatch, of course, I hope you guys went on and took download the free trial. It's a 30-day free trial, and this will definitely help you to see if this is something that you want to do. I'm in love with it. I am a Wilcom fan, and I've had Wilcom, but for some reason, Hatch is more user friendly to me. I do have Embroidery as well, but I just feel so much more comfortable using Hatch, and that's the reason why I would like to bring her on so that we could just share some of the features and benefit that Hatch has to offer. So without any further ado, Miss Suzanne, we would like to welcome you to the platform, and I hope we have a great time tonight. So let me put you up on the big screen.
Awesome. Hi everyone, thank you so much for having me on. I'm so excited to be able to come on. Like everyone said, it is early morning Sydney time here, not too early, so that's kind of good. But it's really great to be able to come on and talk all things Hatch with you. So I've been working with Wilcom and with Hatch for a while now. I've actually been working as embroidery and digitizing for like forever, and then I've had a whole like career inside the fashion industry. And then they came on and they're like, "Hey, we need someone to come talk about embroidery. Do you want to come do that?" So that's how I ended up here. So almost all the social media videos you see from Hatch and from Wilcom is all me. And then I get to do fun things like this as well.
Awesome. Well, welcome. So you could take over and you could start from where you want to start, and in between we'll ask some questions, both myself and Vicky, but you could take over. So Vicky actually, next right here on the screen, she did a a class just like this where she taught everyone how to digitize and Hatch. So she is definitely a fan. Okay.
That's fantastic. And
She
we
knows
love
it.
hearing
I mean,
that.
she's the one. She's my go. Yeah, she's my go-to person. So you could just take it over and let us have it.
Awesome. So we talked about a whole bunch of questions when we went through, and one of the questions that came through was, what's the different levels of Hatch and how do they help you start a business or get started with embroidery? So I thought I'd try and break them down a little bit, and I'll start at the top because if you can afford it in your budget, that's the one that's going to help you the most. So the top level is Hatch Digitizer, and what it does is it will actually allow you to actually manually digitize. So if someone comes to you with a logo and they're like, "Hey, I just opened this gift shop, can you do me like merch?" That's the level that you need for that. So if you're looking to purchase, you're going to start looking at Digitizer and then work out how much it's going to work on your budget coming down from there. But it's the one that gives you access to absolutely everything in terms of the usages of when you actually use the program. So if any of you are on the 30-day trial, that's the access level that you have. So after the 30-day trial, if you purchase one of the lower levels, you'll actually lose a little bit of what you had trialed. So always think about that. When you trial, it's actually on the digitizer level. So does that make sense for everyone? I'm just trying to read the comments at the same time and get all the questions in.
Anyone have a question?
I will definitely ask the question. If anybody have any questions, you guys could just ask, and then we'll definitely stop and ask her to answer.
Yeah, for sure.
So this is the one that was this is the one that was $7.99.
Yes, so that was the one that was $7.99. So whenever we have a big sale, so we've just gone through a big Stitch Fest, so that was like one of our biggest sales of the year. That's the one that you save the most on during the sales. If you start with one of the lower levels, so say you want to start with like Personalizer or Composer, because all you want to do at the moment is maybe you just want to add text to things, put people's names on things, which I'm seeing more and more people like taking a small machine. I'm not sure if I can show it. Right here, I have a small single needle machine. I'm actually surrounded by machines because I'm in our machine room. But I'm seeing lots of people take single needles to events and doing pop-ups and just adding names to things. You could do that with like Personalizer or Composer. And then especially if you're just starting out and learning machine embroidery, so you're still getting the hang of your machine. Once you get those levels and you're like, I am so dialed in with my machine, I can hoop anything now, then you can be like, all right, well, I can save up, and you can actually jump up to Digitizer and you can just get the upgrade. So that's kind of a fun thing that you can go up from levels. If you're doing super well with Hatch and you're like, I need more, and you're starting to look at machines which are not only multi-needle but maybe multi-head, so you're really going into like small production levels, you can actually upgrade from Hatch to Embroidery Studio as well. So there's actually a pathway to take you from like the very entry level of Hatch all the way through to the highest level of Embroidery Studio. So as a company, Willcom tries to make that easier because we realize that people grow and businesses grow and change. So yeah, there's actually a whole way to go. So people is asking, does Hatch University, so Hatch Academy, does it teach you to create a font? So there's a whole bunch of ways in there where it'll show you how to digitize out a font. I've actually been writing mine recently. Apparently my handwriting is very lovely and everyone would like to make a font from it. So in order to make a font, I have to write out the entire alphabet in uppercase and lowercase, and then add all of the extra asterisks, exclamation points, all of the extra sort of pieces. And that's actually going to go off to one of our digitizers are all in-house. So that will go to one of our digitizers and actually be professionally digitized, which means that as a Hatch one, it can also be resized and done different things. But you can actually do that in the Academy classes. So Embroidery Studio, people are asking, I like to refer to Embroidery Studio as Hatch's big brother sometimes.
Yeah.
Because Hatch is super powerful. And what you'll find is if you're starting a home business, it's really awesome for you to do that. Or if you're like just doing it as a hobby and doing crafty kind of things, brilliant. Everything that you need is in there. Embroidery Studio is our professional level of software, and it has a whole bunch of extra features in it which are sometimes, how do I put this, specific to multi-needle, multi-head machines. So things like, we just covered this in our Stitch Fest with our team with Willcom Embroidery Studio. And what we did was we talked about a cool feature that they have called team names. So in Hatch, if you're doing a whole team, you have to save each individual file and then stitch each individual one. So you've got to do like, here's Todd, here's Barry, here's Steve, whatever the names are. In Embroidery Studio, you can actually use a matrix and it will actually pull it in for you, and you can tell the machines which head is doing which name. So it sends it all out and it turns the machines on and off. So that's a really short explanation of what that huge capability is. If you go to the Willcom main website, so that would be willcom.com, and you look at the blog there, you're looking for one of the latest blogs called Team Names. Maria, who also works in the marketing team, she just did an awesome overview of how that explains. So it gives you more control over your digitizing, but it also speeds up factory level production things for you as well. All right. Do we have any other questions? No, just lots of
No,
people saying
no, just
hi.
hi, Rose.
So what I'll do is, Vicky, go
Yes,
ahead with
ma'am.
one of the questions, from the red bar.
Okay, so how do I convert an image into stitches automatically? So how do I auto digitize?
Okay, so you bring your artwork in. So in Hatch, you bring it in, insert your artwork, and then you can just go to your auto digitize tools. So with the auto digitize tools, one thing I would say is almost invariably, if your image has text, try and match one of the text tools in Hatch before you bring it in, because the text tools, so if it's a pre-digitized font, so especially if it's a Hatch font, that's a professionally digitized font. That's going to get you better results than auto digitizing your font. So do check that out. If you need to know what fonts are in Hatch before you buy, or if you're just using it a lot, we have a free ebook which you can download, and it shows you all the fonts, where they are, and the recommended sizes for them as well. So it's kind of like a cheat sheet on your fonts, and it will take it all in and out for you. And show you the sizes, because sizing is very important with fonts in terms of clarity. So that was step one. So if it's got an extra lettering, try and maybe take that out, or just ignore that sort of section. You're going to take it in, and then you can apply your auto digitizing. With your auto digitizing, you can then go back and re-edit things as well. So on the sidebar, there's actually a little, in the digitizing drop-down menu, there's like extra things in there for you for auto digitizing. But you can always go back in, change the stitch type, change the underlay, change your pull compensation. And for all people, if you're brand new and you don't know what those words are, so underlay helps keep things nice and stable as it's stitching out. And your pull compensation is the push and pull of the stitches as it's stitching out over the fabric. So it's going to go with different things for you like that. So yeah, auto digitizing is awesome, saves you heaps of time, but I really love the fact that you can actually go back in and re-edit that as well.
Awesome. Let me see if there's any question in the chat before I ask you the next question. So,
I'm just my Teams
so-
is going blah 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 inside, so I'm just turning off my Teams.
Oh.
So I told the team that I was on a live, and it's just been going on my side, so I'm just turning that off. So
Okay, nice. Tell them don't bother you right now. That's how I say it.
Things.
You gotta do the accent. Don't bother me right now. Right? All right. So, can I customize stitches types, or do I have to use the defaults?
You can totally customize them. If you are the kind of person who likes to play and likes to experiment, this is where the EMB file type for Hatch really comes into its own. So what I'll often do is I'll often bring in my artwork. I'll sometimes auto digitize, sometimes I'll digitize from scratch, just depends sort of, what I'm feeling like. But once I'm happy with it, I will save that as the EMB file. Then I sometimes will save a second version, and that one I play with. I'm like, okay, what textures can I add in here? What motif fills can I use? And things like textured stitching, motif fills, different types of stitching. If you're looking to make money and you want your machine to run more efficiently, use less stitching, so using less thread, running faster so you can get more things done. Looking at some of those different stitch types is such a great way to do that, because maybe instead of having like a full flat tatami stitch, you might turn that into like an accordion spacing stitch, and suddenly your stitch count has dropped way down. You're using less thread, your machine's running faster, and then it also looks really cool because it's actually starting to, you can contour things to different stitch types. So we just did a quick stitch out the other day. I don't think it's still here, but it was a sailboat, and we actually curved the stitching to go with the sails. So it made the boat, instead of looking very flat and very kind of one-dimensional, suddenly it's starting to look very textural and very big and round, which is kind of one of the great things about embroidery and what sets it apart from things like screen printing, because you can use texture, and that texture is really awesome.
Awesome. So to piggyback off that, can one go into Hatch Academy and learn something like that?
Yes. So there's a whole bunch of different lessons on creating your own motif fills and how to adjust the motif fills that already are in there and how to create your custom stitches. So those ones are all in there, ready for you to go, and you can read through them. With all the Academy classes, it'll take you through and I'll have an example for you, but it also gives you the files. So if you're one of the people who kind of learns by like digging into the file and seeing the things, you can actually look at the file types in there as well. But it takes you through step by step in not only written form, but also in video form as well. Sorry, one sec.
Right.
I've really got to move my computer.
So guys, if you do have questions, please make sure you can write them in the chat and let us know, and we will definitely ask. Mark, what we're gonna do, both myself and Vicky can definitely help you with that,
Mark,
Mark.
please DM me. Please,
Yeah.
I can definitely help you with that. Send me
We'll
a
get
message.
your computer.
Yeah.
All right, so someone's saying it won't respond on my PC. Is that in relation to your hatch and getting it started, or is that for the live?
No, for
The
the hat.
hat.
He's unable
Okay, cool.
to download
So
it.
anytime that you have hatch issues, if you can't, so first thing, check your requirements of your computer. So it's there on the Hatch main page. You can actually go through and check your computer requirements. Hatch is a very powerful program, but it needs a lot of grunt to run it. So you got to make sure that you meet the requirements. Otherwise, sometimes things don't go well. So check that one first. But whenever you get stuck, you can actually submit a support ticket. So you can go in and there's a submitted support ticket, and the team there are ready to help you. I had to do it. I was working at home one day and I don't know what I did, but I managed to just like lock myself out of so many things. And the team actually logged in remotely for me and fixed all my issues for me. And they can do that for you, but a lot of the times they can just give you some like tips and be like, hey, try this, try that. So the support team is there for you. One thing I would say is that when you're logging into support, use the same email address that you use to either purchase Hatch or do your free 30-day trial, because that's how they check out what is happening with your system. They need that email kind of address linked to it. So just check that. And so Mark's just saying it might be a requirement thing. Check it out. The other thing you can do is sometimes people just like clear their caches of their memory, and that kind of works really well for them as well.
Awesome. Vicky?
Yeah, the piggyback off of that with Hatch Academy and what Michelle asked, is there a lesson that tells you how to make keyboard collection fonts?
Yes.
If in case you purchase an outside font?
Yes. So if you purchase an outside font and you want to bring it in, you can map it as a KDC, every time with that lettering. So a KDC is a keyboard design collection. There's a number of them which are built into Hatch, and you'll see really beautiful we do lots of lettering style ones that are really great if you're doing individual monogram type things, just really cool. There's a whole monogram section in Hatch as well, but we can get to that. Mm-hmm. So when you're bringing in your KDCs, you can actually map them out if you can do it. You can also create your own, which is really cool. So I think off the top of my head, there's at least 3 lessons. One's on mapping your keyboard, one's on creating your KDCs, and the other one's on using your KDCs. So those are all within the Academy. The Academy is packed filled with so many lessons. And sometimes you'll find, like sometimes I'll be watching one thing and I'm learning about one thing, and then I'm like, oh, hang on, I can use this for something else that I was watching. So one thing I always like to remind people is that you can actually get the Hatch Academy as an app. It works on iPhones and on Androids. So you can go and get the app, log in with your email address that you logged in to buy Hatch with, and then it's in your phone. I commute by bus. I love watching it on the bus because I can be like, I kind of leave work and I'm like tired, but then I'm like thinking about all the things I want to sew and create. So I'm on the bus just like, what can I do today? Oh, applique. Let's look at that.
Right.
So if you're traveling around or like I always hear from people and they're like, I spend a lot of time watching children's sports or like driving kids to and from different things or having to wait. And it's fantastic for that as well.
I actually just downloaded the Hatch Academy app, and it is I can lay in my bed and
Hmm.
watch it and take a few notes. So
It's so
that is
good.
that was definitely good. I have T had a question. She said my Hatch sometimes says my license unavailable and I have to restart.
Okay, so the license unavailable one, that's definitely in the FAQs on the Hatch website. But sometimes what happens is if you have intermittent internet connectivity, so you don't need Hatch to be connected to the internet at all times, but you do need it to be connected once every 30 days, or it starts to have some issues about licensing. Because what it does is when you log in, it like goes back to the servers, checks, make sure for updates, all that kind of thing. So if you're getting that and the restart doesn't work, you can also submit a support ticket and just double check. But normally it means you just have to make sure you're logged in and connected to the internet once every 30 days.
Awesome. Vicky.
What's the best way to digitize for a hat using Hatch?
Okay, so with hats, one thing we want to look at is whether it's a structured hat, so like a baseball ball cap style, or whether it's a soft cap. So if it's a soft cap, you can digitize a little differently. But with a ball cap, because you've got all that stiffening at the back, we want to try and work around that a little bit. It also moves a lot because it's a curved surface. So anytime we want to digitize, we want to start from the center and move outwards, which is different to how we would normally digitize. So if you're thinking about starting from the center,
Oops. She probably got a phone issue. There she go. She's back. You're mute. You can't hear you. No voice. No sound. No sound. Still no sound. Maybe you have your audio turned off for when you get back in. No sound. Still no sound. Probably come out and come back in.
It says the microphone's unavailable. Yeah.
Yeah, it says maybe it disconnected your microphone. All right, guys, give her a few minutes. Her microphone got disconnected. It says you're muted. There you go.
I'm back
I think
again.
you're
All right.
Hi,
all right.
Joseph.
Welcome back.
Hey, John.
All right. So sorry about that, everyone. I got a weird TikTok message and I'm like, oh, what's happened there? Okay, I'm back again. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
It's always embarrassing when technology lets you down at the last moment. So with a cap, we want to start center and move outwards with everything. So you still want to think about when you're digitizing, you always want to think about the layers coming up. So you put, your background in first and then you come up. So we definitely want to still go from that, but we want to start our stitching to go from the center outwards. Now, if you've got that really thick central seam in there, sometimes we want to cheat a little bit. With that central seam, say you're doing a circular badge or a circular sort of style onto that cap. Don't start your stop starts right on that central section of your cap, because that seam is really thick and it loves to grab your needle and make an ugly kind of pull point in there. So you can go just off center on those. And if you've got lettering, cheat. This is the best way to do it. So if it has like a lettering going across in a banner, if you can smoosh those letters over a little bit so it avoids that center seam, your stitching is going to be so much better than if you just run it across. So sometimes when we're thinking about digitizing, we're thinking about how to translate the design the artwork into stitches. With a cap, we want to think about translating it into stitches, but also how do we be nice to our machine to make our machine work less hard for it. So we're going to avoid that center seam as much as possible, particularly with fine lines or lettering. And honestly, you can move things out a little bit and people can't tell the difference. You actually can't see that little extra bit. So smoosh that out. And the other thing I definitely take a look at is your push-pull compensation. So this is where we can actually adjust the way the stitching does. So if you want a perfect circle when you're digitizing, quite often you'll actually do an oval, because as the machine stitches out and it pushes and pulls against the fabric, we want that to work for us. So there's actually a really great class inside the Academy on nothing but pull compensation. If you are struggling to get really crispy designs in a really nice shape, or maybe as you're stitching, you can see that underlay stitching poking out on some of your sides. First of all, check your hooping, because it might be your hooping and your stabilizer, but pull compensation will totally save you in that situation. So check out your pull comp and see how that works for you.
Awesome. Thank you. Let me see if anybody, so I think one person asked, can we digitize sequin?
Yes, it depends on your machine is also the other thing. That's depends on your machine. So some of the machines, like I have seen Pfaff and Bonita machines, which have a sequin dropper come through for them, but it's a very specific add-on for those single needle machines. For multi-needle machines, I've got a Beruden right over here, which has got the huge sequins things coming off the front. If anyone wants to see that one, you'll actually see it, not with the sequins, but you'll actually see it stitching out in our Mother's Day live stream that we did on YouTube. But for things like sequins, it really depends on your machine capability. I have seen a TikTok where someone individually placed them with a set of tweezers and had actually got their stitches to actually jump and go one by one, which was both amazing.
And tedious. And tedious.
Yeah, so it would not be a way I would recommend to make money from things like that. If you want to fake your sequins, though, and you want to do it, particularly if you do, you see these lots where you brush it one way and it's one color of sequins, and you brush it the other way and it's a different color, you can buy that as fabric. So if you want sequins, but you don't want to actually individually put them down, or you don't have the machine capabilities to do it, buy that fabric and do it as an applique.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be worrying about my fingers. I don't think I'll be doing that single thing.
That's crazy.
Do it for the first 3 and then get bored.
Yeah, I don't want to do that. So, TaylorMade said, when doing applique, is there an option to do a cover stitch that is not a satin stitch?
Yes, there is. So when you choose it, you can actually choose in the run stitches, you can actually choose some of the patterned run stitches. So you can do things like a stem stitch or a back stitch, and you can add those in your decorative stitches. So it'll be in your object properties. Sometimes, depending on which way you do your applique, you sometimes have to break that apart and then apply that to that individually. So it is a little bit, depends which way you actually have set up your applique, because there's a preset of applique lettering inside Hatch, but there is also a preset of applique to actually help you work out like where your cut files go and how to lay everything down. So depends which way you do it, but yes, you definitely can. And you can move your, say you want to do that one that's really beautiful at the moment, which is like got the raw edge of the stitching. You can do that, and instead of making your offset right on the edges, you can move your offset inwards, which means you'll get a lovely stitch line around it, but then you get that cool fray edge on the cool. So that really works as well. So yes, you can totally do it. There are a couple of different applique classes inside the Academy, and there's also some projects inside the Academy which have the different applique things. If anyone wants to do chenille style applique, we covered that in a live stream. Maybe I'll try and see if I can drop that into the Academy for you as well. But we made it look like chenille by doing it as an applique using toweling because it was just a really cool way to fake out some chenille.
Okay.
So basically, you're saying that most of the question that we've asked so far is in Hatch Academy.
Yeah, like the Academy has I want to say 600 lessons. I always get the number wrong, but it's huge in terms of what it will actually teach you. And I really like the fact that there's the best course when you're just starting. There's one called Getting Started with the Academy.
Mm-hmm.
And it will actually take you through and getting started with Hatch. And it shows you all of the basics. And there's some ones which are just cover the toolbars. So if you're like, I want to do digitizing, but I don't know what's that symbol? I don't know what that means. All the toolbar ones will take you through that, which I really like, because even sometimes if there's something I haven't done for a while and I'm like, I know I can do this, but I've forgotten what the tool is called, I'll go back into toolbars and look it up, which it seems ridiculous, but the capabilities of the program are so huge that sometimes I forget where I'm up to or what I'm doing, or I'm learning something new, because I do a lot of garment sewing, and my whole goal is just like, well, what haven't I done before? What can I do? And so I'll figure something out.
Awesome. Now, looking at small business, I hate using the word small business because I'm a big business owner. I don't do small business, but that's the word out there.
Yeah.
Right. So we're going to go ahead and use it for tonight. So what are some of the features that you think Hatch could help with a small business to speed up their production? Because most of them would think, oh, let me just get a digitizer. Let me just do send it to somebody. Let me just buy it from Etsy. How, by investing in this software, how can it help me to build my business?
So one of the things I think is the easiest, most obvious way is the EMB file format. So when you digitize or bring anything and do anything in Hatch, you're going to save it as that EMB file format. That EMB file format allows you to size, resize, stretch, make it as big as you want, as small as you want. And it doesn't just squish it down to a smaller box. It actually recalculates it for you. So if you've digitized something for like a huge back chest of like a collegiate jacket, and then they're like, oh, actually, we want them on our polo shirts as well. And then you're like, well, now I've got to go back to my digitizer. I've got to pay more money. And if they're a bad digitizer, they're just going to squish it down. And depending on what program they have, they may not have the capabilities to recalculate those stitches. In Hatch, you design it once, you digitize it out once, and then you can infinitely resize it. I also really like that feature. At home, my machine is a very small 4x4 inch hoop, because at the time when I bought my machine, I didn't have the space and I didn't have the budget for a bigger hoop. So if I ever get more space and more budget and I want to go up a size, everything that I've bought for my 10 by 10, I still don't want to be limited by that, because now I've got a bigger hoop. But if I'd done it as an EMB file, zoop, up to a new size, stitch it out again. So I really like that, because it allows you to infinitely resize things, infinitely recolor things, and you can steal things from one design to the next design. You don't have to start from scratch each time. So if you're, say, doing lots of patches and the patch is identical, but it's just got like a different logo sitting on top or a different image, just keep your base patch and just keep dropping a different one on it and saving there's a different file. So it'll actually speed you up from that process. With the Hatch Academy as well, because the Academy is going to teach you how digitizing works and how that works with your embroidery and how the actual process of stitching works out, you're going to invest in yourself and you're going to learn a lot more than if you just have to keep buying off someone. Yes, the process is slower. It is slower to learn how to digitize for yourself, but I think if you're learning to digitize and you're learning your machine, in the end, you're going to be faster and know how to solve problems better than if you're always just buying in a file. Because if you're just buying in a file, you're like, well, that's the file. It's that line doesn't line up and that bit looks a bit funky and I really wish that bit was textured. And unless you keep going back to your digitizer, which costs you more money, then you don't have that level of like control over what you're doing. So I really like the file type for that. And one of the other things I really like is we can set your fabric type. So fabric type makes a big difference when we're stitching, because it adjusts to push-pull compensation, it adjusts the types of stitches. So by allowing you to change your different fabric type, it's going to help you get a better stitch out on your fabric. particularly if you're coming from a non-fabric, non-garment background and you're like, I want to be side hustle, this looks fun, but you don't know about fabrics. That's a big learning curve. Make the program do the work for you because it's already worked it out. So little things like that I find are really big time saving. And the other thing I really find time saving is the fonts, because there are so many fonts in there, and they can be like, because they've all got like a recommended size. If you go smaller than the recommended size, it may not work. If you go bigger than the recommended size, you might end up with issues. If you stay within that sweet spot of the recommended size, you're going to have really nice stitching. And a lot of businesses can get a long way just by adding names onto things and personalizing things like that. Like, we talk to people all the time, and like half their business is just adding Mr. and Mrs. or Mr. and Mr. or Mrs. and Mrs. to towels for new wedding parties. They're like, I do so many weddings and all I'm doing is Mr., Mrs. over and over. So I think if you've got a choice of good lettering, it can get you a long way in. And while you're doing the lettering, you learn how to digitize your logos at the same time.
Awesome. So there's a question about can pre-bought fonts be used in Hatch Digitizer, BX fonts, for example?
Yes, you can totally bring in your fonts. There is definitely instructions inside the Academy on how to bring those ESA fonts into your Hatch so that you can use them. Very occasionally, someone needs to map them, but I don't know if that's exactly an ESA or whether sometimes someone's bought something slightly wacky and then it needs to be time mapped in. But yes, you can totally use ESA fonts for it as well.
What about BX? BX font, BX.
I remember my file types. Yes, I think there's an extra step in there, I want to say. Yes, I know you can definitely bring the file types in, but I feel like there's an extra step I'm forgetting.
You can bring the file types in, however, you have to map them. So you need to know your sizing and your maximum and your minimum of how big that can go, and then you can put it into the keyboard collection.
Yeah.
Or you can bring it in one by one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you're a font person, so some people come and that's what they've been doing is they've been selling digital fonts. Maybe they've been creating fonts to go into things like Procreate and things like that. You can actually turn those ones into digitized ones by when you learn to digitize, it's a very similar process to bring it in. So if you're coming at it from a graphics background and you like fonts, it's a great way to do it, because if you create it in Hatch, you can also then go on to sell your fonts as well, because you don't always have to just sell a finished, embroidered, stitched out product. You can actually sell your files as well. So that's another way to earn money that sometimes people don't think about.
Awesome. Will they add Marrow Stitch back into the Academy?
There's a slight problem. One of the faux Marrow stitches is copyrighted. And so there is a slight problem with that one, but there is a lot of ways you can create a look that looks like a Marrow stitch that isn't a Marrow stitch. So one of the very, very simple ways to do it is have a really nice tight satin edge. On the inside of that edge, run yourself run stitch. You can also do a back stitch or a triple run as well. And then it looks like it, but you haven't done anything different. So there's 2 whole lessons at least on creating badges and patches inside the Academy. One's all about how to create like the base patch, and then there's an extra one which shows you how to do keychains and key fobs and things like that as well, which I'm seeing tons of those around at the moment, particularly plushy ones after those Labubu things. But I'm seeing lots more embroidered ones, and all of that can be created in Hatch as well, so which is really quite fun.
Awesome. So if someone bought the software, or someone who's already got the software, upgrades, is it very costly for upgrades?
So upgrades, we try to keep the cost as low as possible. Sometimes when we're so some things will be rolled out and there is no cost. So like things like bug fixes and general kind of things, that goes. When we're jumping, so we just last year we jumped from Hatch 2 up to Hatch 3. that was a cost. But we try and let people know well in advance. I'm trying to word this correctly. Your previous level of hatch still works, so it doesn't get cut off. It still works until like at some point the computers that run that might like just tap out and not have enough sort of programming or run space for that. So, but at the moment that one still runs. You can keep running that. When you go up to things like when we went up to Hatch 3, you also got a bunch of new things inside the Academy as well. So yes, it was a cost, but you've also got extra things as well. So we do try and give you notice and keep it as cheap as possible. And it's normally a significant upgrade. Like you get a whole bunch of new features. So like last time you got a whole bunch of KDCs, new lessons inside the Academy, those new fonts, and I'm sure there's a bunch of things I've forgotten off that list.
Awesome. Vicky, go ahead with the next question.
I think we answered. Let me see. What are some tips to create professional quality logos that are consistent for our clients?
So consistency comes down to how you visualize out your, not only how you digitize, but how you analyze the actual logo itself. So a lot of people try, and this is not a bad thing, they try and make it exactly like you would do it as if it is screen printed or done with a DTF or something like that. So things like fades and different things like that, they try and make it exact. And then if their skills aren't as high as they would like, or maybe their machine isn't as like dialed in as they would like, they get a little sad. So what I would say is when you start to get in logos, and I find myself doing this all the time, like I said, I'm on the bus, I'm looking at logos, and I'm starting to look at them in terms of stitches. So it's things like, you know, if there's a new Korean fried chicken shop down the street, it's just like a really simple block chicken logo with some wording underneath and then some Korean lettering underneath that. So the chicken on itself, sure, you could just do that as a flat tatami, fine. But if you want to look really nice, what happens if it was a tatami with a small satin edge to it? Or what happens if I broke up the chicken and I kept it and I did a different section for the wing and a different section for the head, and I'm starting to break it apart and give it a little bit more texture and leaving it less flat. So don't try and replicate it exactly as is. Replicate it in the way that is best for embroidery. So when we're thinking about embroidery, edges make really nice edges when they have a satin stitch or some kind of line work around the edging. It helps tie it in. It also helps if you're going on like a piqué, like a polo shirt. That texture is not the most fun. So rather than have that kind of feathered kind of edge, put a nice border around that. So think about things like that when you're doing a full fill background and you want to fade. There's some really great steps on how to do fades with inside the Academy, but also think about like maybe breaking it down so you have less colors to fade, or if it's going on, it's like say you're doing a nighttime fade and it's going to fade from like navy down to like pink or something, and it's going onto a navy garment. How about we use the navy of the garment as the first part of the fade? So it's all about how do I replicate something as stitches? So a great way is to look at things that people have already done and created in stitching. And sometimes I will look at how people have done things when they've done hand embroidery as well, because sometimes you want to replicate that kind of loopy, longer stitch that's slightly more hand look, and there's some stitches inside Hatch that help you do that. But a lot of it's about how do I analyze my artwork and bring it through. And text is one of those things that makes a big difference. So sometimes people will give you a logo and it's a nice circle and all of the text is inside the logo. But then they've also got a picture of a truck and a house and this and that. It's a lot to fit as an embroidery. So sometimes I would go back to the customer and say, hey, how about we move the text out of the circle? So let's put your, like so the company name above the circle. We put your name underneath the circle. And then we've got a bit more space inside that to give your actual design work some breathing room, because unlike printing or DTF stuff where we're working with pixels, we're working with stitches. We need a little bit more space. We need a little bit more breathing room. If we can make that work for us, then that is a great way to do it. So analysis of design is a really big part about getting that good stitch out and good look. So honestly, just start looking around at how people have created their artworks and think in your head, how would I do this? And practice is just such an important part of this. I remember when I first started learning to digitize, we would digitize a whole bunch of things, like as many as we could fit in a hoop. We would hoop it up, stitch it out. We wouldn't even stitch it in the proper colors most of the time, but all we were learning was like push-pull compensation, how to make the logo look better, and the analysis of it. So how do we stitch it out to make it look good? So I would definitely say look into how you look at the artwork and then how you're actually going to digitize it out in order to get really professional quality things.
So now that we've had the quality things, how would we send that file to a customer?
So because we've all been burnt in the past, don't ever send your customer your EMB file. I know that sounds terrible, and we would all love everyone to be trusting and wonderful, but they're not. So don't do that. What I would do is inside Hatch, you can turn everything to true view. So as you're digitizing, you can actually set your thread chart out to either the customer's colors or, my preferred way of doing it, the colors I have to stitch with. So if you're working with Madeira thread, change it to a Madeira thread card. If you're working with Brother thread, change it to a Brother thread chart. If you're using a thread chart that doesn't already exist in Hatch, you can create your own. There is an entire lesson on that inside the Academy. I really like it because it means I can show people what it looks like in the colors that it's going to stitch. Because sometimes they're like, I need CMYK this, or I need Pantone this. And you're like, what's that in stitches? So showing them in the thread is a fantastic way. Once you've digitized, set it all to go to a true view. You can then export that true view as a clear background PNG file. If you want to be a little bit extra, particularly if you're trying to get more work out of the same customer, you can then use that file to mock up garments, and you could put it on like a left chest of a t-shirt. You could put it on the back of a hoodie. You could put it on a baseball cap. You could put it on a tote bag. I like to try and show customers as big a breadth as possible, because then they'll be like, of course I need tote bags, when really they only came to you for t-shirts, because now they've seen how cool their design looks.
Yeah.
And that's a really great feature, to just bring that straight out of Hatch and just drop that on. And because it's a clear backed file, it's super easy to do that. So that's a really great way to do it. And if you're buying your blanks from a set company, so not an ad, just the company I know of, here in Australia, there's a company called AS Colour. They make lots of blanks. It's a very popular place for lots of embroiderers to get their blanks. They have an entire library of stock photos, which is just the t-shirt front and back in every colorway, just the hoodie front and back in every colorway. You can go grab them off their website for free and drop on your logo.
So repeat that again. What was the name?
So they're called AS Colour.
All right.
And this is in Australia, right?
They're in Australia and New Zealand. I have seen them. So the Wilcom team with Embroidery Studio were in Birmingham earlier this year for a big commercial trade show. I noticed that they have a stand there. And I think they were at Long Beach as well for the trade show there. So I think they are expanding. But I'm sure Gildan and lots of the other sort of black places have the same thing. It's just I happen to know AS Colour one because it's one that's quite popular here in Australia. But it's a really good way to get those stock photos and actually drop your logo in. And, some customers have little to no imagination, and that's fine. And sometimes they need to really be shown what the possibilities are. So I'll be like, hey, here's the thing you wanted. Here's some extras we could also do. And often you'll get a bigger order from that.
Gotcha. How often does I think there was a miss question that I missed. How often does Hatch upgrade?
Um, so little fixes get rolled out all the time. You probably won't even see most of that, but the little anything that gets rolled out. Other than that, it's on a multi-year kind of. I was going to say expansion, and I was like, that's the wrong word. A multi-year kind of plan of upgrades and things like that. I don't work with that team, so I don't have any inside information on that one. So as the minor upgrades every few months. So in the chat, I can see Richard, who's one of my workmates here. Richard's actually answering some minor upgrades every few months. As I said, those ones are not paid for upgrades. They just happen sort of organically. And then the major updates are sort of 1.5 to 2.5 years.
Awesome. I'll be honest with you. You've been answering a lot of the questions that I did have down here.
Yes.
I mean, the Hatch Academy blows my mind because I'm gonna be honest with you. I have not taken full advantage of that, and that is definitely a good resource. I
feel
know
like the academy's totally under-resourced.
yes, and I haven't taken full advantage of it. So I definitely need to make sure now that you guys have it on the app, you could do it on your tablet, you could do it on your phone, you could be having a whatever and just be learning. So definitely, and the fact that you're just answering most of the questions that I have.
One of the things I will say on the academy is if there's something specific that we don't have or you can't find, you can always jump into our Facebook group. So there is a Hatch users Facebook group. It's monitored by all of us in the team. Richard does lots of the heavy lifting in terms of the monitoring and answering in questions in there. But if you actually go in there and you're like, hey, I really want to know about X. If there's an academy class, we're going to point you straight to it. If there's not an academy class, we might start secretly working on one in the background for you. So we're really responsive in seeing what people want to learn and trying to give you that information as quickly as we can.
Gotcha. And I know to go back, I remember once I had an issue with the operation part of it. And I know a lot of people, they kept saying, my license go out, and you did explain all of that. The one thing that I know was that I had to definitely upgrade my computer. So for those of you guys who are having the issue, please, just like she said, revisit your requirements and definitely might have to just make some upgrades.
And sometimes it's about freeing up space as well. So check and make sure that you don't have lots of extra stuff on there. Like, I create a lot of content. I keep all of my content on a separate hard drive because otherwise my poor computer just cannot code. So do look at things like that. Like, I've got a 5 terabyte hard drive. It wasn't that expensive. It keeps everything nice and safe, keeps my machine running nice and smoothly. So think about those kind of things. I know it's an extra expense and I always feel bad about that, but when you have the extra power in your computer, Hatch just runs along happily and does its thing.
Right. Yeah. Because I switched my hard drive out, and now it's like chef kiss. Like,
oh, nice.
It runs pretty well. Now I know that we didn't have enough time for you to show us like a quick digitizing and stuff, and I'm sure you will come back on again. I know it's very early there. I can see the bright lights outside, but we do greatly appreciate your time, greatly appreciate the fact that you've taken the time out. So if there's anything else that you want to pop in, I know I'm gonna be honest, you've really answered all the questions.
All the questions, yeah. All questions point to Hatch Academy.
All questions do.
That's how I learned, so
yeah. And the other thing we have a new home business hub. So for anyone who is doing specifically home business usage for Hatch, there is a new hub. You can navigate to it from the main Hatch website. Inside that, we have a free ebook which takes you through a bunch of topics. If you're just starting out, some really good things to cover about how to set up your space and things that you're looking at. But there is more content being planned for that home business hub. So if there's anything specific that you want, shoot us a message. We're always happy to hear about it. Other people helping us with content is always fantastic. So always shoot us an extra email about that. But there's a lot more stuff coming for home business people because we realize how many people are using Hatch to run a business and earn extra money, and we want to help you out. So anything you want to know, ask us. We'll try and give you as much information as possible with all of that.
Awesome. How often do you guys run the special? Because I know now people are probably saying, "Oh, I didn't get the special."
So there's lots of specials that run throughout the year on varying different amounts. The big special, those ones don't tend to come around super often. So the next one will probably at that price. I'm hoping Richard jumps in here for me. No, I think the next special's coming up regularly, and then there's big ones coming up sort of a couple of times within the year. But if you're looking to take advantage of a special, what I would suggest is joining the newsletter. So the newsletter, you don't get bombarded with stuff. With the newsletter, you will get the information about the upcoming sales. Occasionally, you'll get information about lives that I'm doing. I'm trying to do a live every fortnight where I am showing you a technique or showing you stitch outs, things like that. If you've got ideas that you want for the lives, shoot me an email. And then also within the newsletter that goes out, all the sales, all the extras, anytime we're giving away anything for free, it's all going to be in there. So Stitch Fest is definitely your best time to get the best pricing, but then you can look at it. If anyone wants to try before you buy, you obviously get the 30-day free trial. After the 30-day free trial, there's also, if you then purchase, you also then get a 30-day money-back guarantee. So you can try it for another 30 days, and if you're like, not for me, you can get in contact, money back, no problems. But sometimes people just need a little bit extra time with that. And I'm trying to think of all the ways
They do have finances as well, right? You can finance.
Yes.
Yep, so you can do the payment plan ones as well. So you can also do that. So that is a good one, I think, to find. Hatch is not a subscription model, so sometimes people confuse the subscription with the payment plan one. So it's not subscription. Once you have paid, it is yours. So yeah, sometimes that gets a little unclear.
I hate subscription. When I tell you, I with a capital H, capital A, capital T. I don't like it.
I like to own it.
I think it seems like that's the way that all these softwares are going. And what I love about the fact that Hatch still say, okay, if you're at note 2, hey, here's the upgrade, you pay the difference and you move along. Your 2 does not stop working. However, just like you said, computer might get a little older, but like Richard said, you have flex pay. It's amazing. Now, quick question before I forget. Well, you said something about lives. Where do you do your live? On YouTube or on TikTok?
So we do a live stream. So I do it every fortnight. So one's on tomorrow. So it's 10 a.m. Sydney time, which is adjusted the time zone differences. If you're in New York, works out to be 8 p.m. For you. I'm sorry for people in London. It works out to be a terrible time for you. It's 1 a.m. So it works out at sort of different times around the world. But we try and get it so it tries to hit as many people. But one of the reasons we do it so that it goes onto YouTube and onto Facebook, it means that you can watch the replays. Whereas sometimes people find the replays, they can't find them on other platforms. So we try and keep it really organized for people so that they can watch the replay. So yeah, 10 a.m. Thursday mornings for us, which is Wednesday evenings for you. And yeah, every fortnight. And tomorrow, do you want to see a sneak peek? What I'm going to talk about?
Yeah.
Yes.
Richard said, in the meantime, she's getting that. Richard said, we also let you upgrade from lower levels and up, and new features only for the price difference.
Yes, and he also said Stitch Fest was in May, and there's another one in November.
Yes.
For the huge discount.
For the big discounts, yeah.
Friday. Yeah, Black Friday, right? November.
Yeah.
Yay! I'm ready to see.
So tomorrow we're talking about tiny designs.
Oh, that's cute. Yes,
So we've been seeing
I
lots
will
of
be
people
there.
going into businesses, taking their machines, and they're doing lots of in-store events, and they're all asking, what can we stitch out that's more than a name, takes a really small amount of time, and stitches out really quickly? And so we've done a whole bunch of little tiny designs, and I'm going to talk you through how to actually digitize out the small designs so that you get least amount of stitches but good clarity. And then we're going to show you some examples of some of that. And I've got some other fun stuff that Hatch is going to be doing that I'll be talking about as well.
Awesome. So that is Thursday, 8 p.m. if you're in the U.S. New York. Well, in the U.S., but in New York.
Are you
Eastern
Tuesday
Standard
today
Time.
or Wednesday? I'm so bad at time zones.
You're Tuesday.
Wednesday for you, because it's tomorrow for me. So Wednesday for you.
Okay, so it's Wednesday for me. Okay,
Yeah, Wednesday.
so that's Wednesday. And that's on YouTube. And so you stream on both
Facebook.
YouTube and Facebook at the
Yeah.
same time?
Yeah, so
And guys, for the Facebook group, you could go back up. It's Hatch Embroidery User Group by Welcome International, correct?
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Awesome. For sure. For sure. So I know that hopefully we could have you back on where you could actually do a design. One day you could just reach out to me and let me know. We have this fun thing that we call Whatever Wednesday. So if you ever have a Wednesday that you would like to join us,
I can make a
definitely.
Wednesday work. That'd be fun.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure it will be fun. So guys, if you guys have no other questions, we did have a great time. And Richie, thank you for coming in, Richie.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming in as well, and chiming in and giving us some fun-filled information as well. So Vicky, did you have any other questions?
No, I'll email Susan.
Awesome, thank you.
Awesome. And if you guys have any other question that you can't think about, because sometimes we don't remember, right? Because
Right.
there's a saying that says the pen remember what the mind might forget. So write it down, send it to me, and I could definitely email it to Suzanne. And then we'll definitely. So sorry I was late. I was in a meeting. No problem. But you know what? That's what we say in Jamaica. No problem, man.
No problem, man.
So, but still, thank you, Richie, for coming in. We sure, like Michelle said, we forgive you. The fact that you still chime in was very special to us. So, thank you very much. And we usually close out, Suzanne, with a countdown so we're respectable for everybody. So, let's see if you can help us, right? We do it by countdown 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good night, everyone. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.